All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Fist in the Frame podcast. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving if you are from the part of the world where you celebrate that. I do, and where I happen to be, it's in a weird spot in the world, but we do celebrate Thanksgiving here. Um, and more or less take it as a another good day to get drunk, do your thing. I had a lot of whiskey and a lot of tequila, which usually is makes for a bad combination, but in this particular day, in this particular time, if you drink good stuff, you'll be treated okay. And the hangover wasn't bad. I'm not going to lie. The hangover was all right. It was very much manageable and had me in tune for a decent Black Friday, which I didn't buy shit again. Maybe some knickknacks or something like that, but nothing crazy. Now, I hope you guys are doing well. My brother got sick again with the unmentionable, but he's doing all right, and I think he's pretty much well. I have to check in on him, see how he's doing. But yeah, and I hope you guys are healthy out there and doing your thing. If you guys went out uh, shopping or whatever, hope you guys didn't catch anything. One of the things that I wanted to catch, I've been watching a lot of anime, and scratch that. I've been rewatching a lot of anime, and the things that I've been watching here, I decided to go back, and I've kind of mentioned this before, but in this past week, about past 10 days or so, I've been watching a lot of anime that I watched from the very beginning. Again, from my little, let's just say my anime renaissance. And I didn't realize that, first of all, my little anime renaissance started at about 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, probably closer to 11 years. And at that time is when I got serious and really started to, I got my subscription to Funimation. I was never big on streaming free anime, whatever that may mean to you. I've always wanted, because I'm a content creator myself, I consider myself an artist. I really don't like, I should say, stealing, or not, I shouldn't say stealing, because there are certain occasions when I think it's all right to, let's just say, bypass the middleman and appropriate sort of stuff. I think I've mentioned this before, where especially in music, how Motown treated its artists unfairly, in my opinion, and never give them the residuals that they needed, or that they are entitled to with their music. For most parts, I agree with more or less finding Motown music and using that and appropriating it in one way, and try to avoid the middleman as much as I can. In those situations where the artist has been snubbed, I do not have a problem with obtaining content. In other venues where there is a specific, let's just say, a way that the artist gets compensated, then yeah, I do agree with that. I don't know exactly how the anime thing is set up right now. I know that basically working on anime nowadays isn't the best. At least it wasn't. At least it went up for sure about 10 years ago. Working on content or working on the anime stuff was really not as profitable. I think hopefully conditions have changed, but they are. It's a thing. It was a thing where compensation wasn't as appropriate as it should have been. Now, given that, I back about 10 years ago is when I decided to go ahead and go, all right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go ahead and pay for my anime. And because there's some sites that got switched, they got cut. Sorry, just crumpling up some aluminum foil. Some sites that were kind of a hassle, and they probably still are. to where it's kind of a hassle to the servers don't work, this, that, and the other. It's kind of slow. And no, I'm not saying that Funimation, High Dive, and even I dare say Crunchyroll are perfect. They are. I mean, High Dive I think is the worst of it, and I think High Dive is getting ready to go. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but it seems like they're pretty much done being international. I don't quote me on it. Don't get your news from me, but it's definitely. I think they're going through some changes. Anyway, I've been viewing things and viewing some new stuff too. Basically, I'm viewing things before I had a podcast, and this podcast is not that old. And it's just really nostalgic, to say the least. And some of these anime, how should I say, is aged well. Some of it, not so much. Particularly in social content matter, I guess, is what I should say. I'm rewatching a little bit of Shuffle, and some parts are like a little cringy now that you separate yourself. 10 years is a lot of happened in 10 years in society. And I'm starting to, rethink my life as well. Certain things. I have conversations with my friends about the way we used to think and things like that. And it is certainly a different world. It's certainly a different world for sure. So I'm rewatching Shuffle right now. But I did watch Unbreakable Machine Doll again. And you know what? Looking back on that, you know what? I wouldn't mind a second season. That's for sure. I'm looking back and I'm like, those were entertaining. A little bit, they were good, and I think deserve an episode to talk about. Shuffle, we're going to have to talk about Shuffle in a different light now as I look into it, right? But there's Shuffle. I rewatched a couple other things as well, and to be quite honest, it's nostalgic, and I loved it, and I think it's really cool, to be quite honest with you, to where I definitely want to talk about those episodes again. The thing that really gets me too, though, is the music. I believe that a few things can actually, and I've mentioned this before and I'll mention it again just because I think it's worth mentioning it, is that the music really ages the anime, almost like no matter how good the animation might be, I think we will be. I mean, if you look back at the 80s and Akira, no matter how good that animation is, or even like, if you take animation like from, especially like fantasy where the wardrobe is something fantastical, right? If you look at that, that's always going to be kind of timeless in a way. I mean, if you look at movies from the 80s and things like that, you're going to know, okay, well, they're dressed a certain way. One of the things that I am doing is I'm actually watching a lot of old 70s movies. And for sure, there's no getting away with the dressing, the costumes, the wardrobe. That sort of thing is definitely dates the production, no matter what it is. But the music is definitely dates, and of course, in certain cases, the animation is what dates it, right? But the music is really what does it, and of course, the way certain animation gets done. I talked last episode about My Happy Wedding, and the animation on that actually is pretty decent. But the animation that kind of looks weird on this, and the one that this episode is about, is I'm looking at. I'm going to mispronounce the word because I want to. My initial is Tishiro Mufume is what I want to call it. It's Onimusha. Onimusha is a samurai story, a fantasy samurai story that deals with the likeness of Tishiro Mifune as the epic swordsman Musashi, the Lord of the Rings, the Book of the Five Rings. I'm currently watching I saw the Aristocrats, Otherworldly Adventure. That's fine, and we'll talk about that. I'm giving the disgraced noble lady a lesson in naughtiness or something like that. It's got a long title. We'll get into that later as well. That one's a new one. I really like it, so I'm only on episode 8 or 9 on that. The animation, though, that happens a lot, especially the Blue-Eyed Samurai is the one I watched on Netflix, and this one, of course, with Tishiro Mifune. And I keep saying that, and I'll explain that in just a second. Onimusha. there is a lot of CGI involved in that, right? Where in some parts it looks a lot like a video game instead of an anime. And you know what? I really don't mind that so much, especially if it's a good story. If it's a decent story, hey man, let's watch it. Let's see what happens. I almost don't care. There's a couple of anime too that's a little bit wrong, I should say, as far as animation goes. Onimusha does somehow make a good balance between the CGI looking moments and what should we say, the acting anime or the action anime, the action parts of the thing. And this one, though, is exactly right up my alley. It's, of course, my alter ego is the Restless Samurai. And I started another podcast on what originally I started off as Korean dramas, anime. I was just going to talk about episodes or talk about, be episodic and talk about the Korean drama shows that I watched. Pretty much set up just like this, is that for Korean live action dramas. But also, I decided to go ahead and talk about basically Asian, mostly Japanese movies. I would say Asian. And the thing is, it's like, well, now saying it out loud, I was going to say I don't know too much about Chinese theater, but actually I do know about 70s and 80s Kung Fu theater, Chinese Kung Fu stuff. We watched that religiously growing up. That's how come I know who Bruce Lee is, which also appears a lot in a bunch of anime as well, still to this day, modern day anime. And, you know, just about any movie where there's fighting, there's some sort of Bruce Lee reference somewhere, whether it's a stance, a movement, wata, or something, right? I do know a little bit about the Chinese film as far as martial arts go. The Japanese, from Akira Kurosawa, all those movies, Satoichi, I believe there's 26 or 27. I own 25 of those movies. I've seen them all, and I've seen some of the TV shows as well. Satoichi is one of my favorite sort of characters in Japanese, and of course, Toshiro Mifune as a samurai, Jojimbo Sanjiro with the Akira Kurosawa workings of these movies. And of course, without these movies, we wouldn't have Star Wars. That's a hill that I will die on. Some people say, "Oh, it's inspired." I'd say it's outright ripped off, but that's neither here nor there. And there's a couple newer ones too that are pretty good. And of course, the Korean. What drew me originally to like Korean movies is the Revenge trilogy by Park. I forget his full name, but they are indeed the No Sympathy for Mr. Devil, Lady Vengeance, and Old Boy. And those Old Boy was remade by Spike Lee. Part of the problem is that I would say it's a terrible remake. But in and of itself, it's not a bad movie, but the Korean versions are better, and they're gorier, and they allow for a lot more of the intensity that is held inside the story than the remake, where you can't show everything somehow in Old Boy. And I just didn't get the same vibe for it. Anyway, that's how I got introduced to Korean theaters. There's a lot of horror movies in there that are really good. And Koreans have, at least the movies that I originally saw back in whatever channel I was looking at, they have very nice, hardcore, gritty feel to them, very dark, which was right up my alley as well. All those movies combined are what make up what I decided is going to make up the other, let's just say, live action podcast, the version of this podcast. The whole reason I brought that up as far as the other channel isn't just going to be Korean drama is because I noticed that my drama list, which is the live action version of my anime list, right? And I don't even know if they're the same people or not. I think that they are. But anyway, that includes all the Japanese movies, especially it looks like everything that's Asian is included in that side. And so I'm going to actually not keep it as a Korean drama podcast, but it's going to be opened up to just about anything that allows me to, anything on my drama list is going to be that I'm going to talk about on there. And it's the Restless Samurai podcast for those keeping score at home and if you're interested. A lot of the time, there's homework in anime. Most of the time, homework takes place as a manga, right? You should read the manga. How many times have we heard that? The manga's better. Or the story continues in the manga. In very rare instances does the story die for peculiar reasons because the author of the manga for one reason or another, without trying to bad vibe anything, for one reason or another, the manga no longer continues. There's a couple anime that stop harsh like that, right? Which I don't understand. I guess it might just be respect to the author in a certain way. But most of the time, actually, I don't know if it's most of the time, to be quite honest with you. It seems to be some of the time, for sure, to correctly phrase, there is manga that supports the anime, that is written, and then the anime comes from that. Sometimes it's the other way around, where the anime actually spawns and generates a light novel written form of it. I have read, I think, one manga in my life, and zero light novels. All right, let me just put that out there. The other form of homework that we have is how one anime spawns off to another one. The most recent one that I can think of is a certain kind of magical index, and then a certain kind of electromagnetic gun. Oh, I fucked that up. I know. And then a certain level of the other one, a certain magical railgun and a certain magical accelerator. And I think it's something like that, right? Where one spawns another one. Now, I don't know if those were all originally mangas, but it seems like they were spun off from there. Again, don't get your technical anime news from me. There are way better sources out there for you to get your history and your anime news and such. I think you guys, if you guys are listening to this and this is an anime podcast, you already know where to get that information from. And so that's the other type of homework. There's always seems to be some sort of subtext that if you're willing to dig, you will find a backstory, or you'll be able to find some sort of prequel or sequel or some sort of offshoot from whatever anime that we're watching. Whether you want to continue the story in written form or see how we got to that particular spot by reading the prequel in written form somewhere, somehow, right? Where this part that we get to is something that I actually know about. And the reason that I had mentioned the aforementioned podcast that I'm working on, Onimusha, first of all, it is a samurai show. It is a fantasy samurai show with ghosts and goblins and zombies and what have you. I'm not sure. I'm going to put out the spoiler alert because I'm not very good at holding back. But here's where I think if you watched and do your homework, you kind of already know where some of this thing is going to. First and foremost, Onimusha, the main character, they kind of rewrite history in a way to where hold on, let me get his name right. The samurai, Musashi Miyamoto, is a historical figure. Let me read you a little bit just so that we can get a sort of quasi-historical thing. And this is from my source, my great magical source called Wikipedia. All right. And it reads, Miyamoto Musashi, and has his other names as well, and then he has his Buddhist names, also known as Niten Duraku, was a Japanese swordsman, philosopher, strategist, writer, and ronin who became renowned through the stories of his unique double-bladed swordsmanship. That's important. And undefeated record in his 61 duels. He was a swordsman, 61 duels, undefeated. So it kind of gives away the end of this story. In his final years, authored the Book of the Five Rings and Dukodo, The Pain of Aloneness. All right, I've read the Book of the Five Rings. It's very interesting. It's one of those books that it teaches martial arts, but somehow because of the ruthlessness of fighting a duel, a lot of businessmen have taken it as a sort of that and The Prince by Machiavelli have been taken under these Wall Street guys as winner-take-all sort of circumstances in, let's just say, capitalistic duels, right? So Miyamoto Musashi is a real figure in Japanese history. All right, what we've done here in the movie Onimushi, I'm going to see, the thing is I want to say Nitishiro Mifume, and somehow I get all my words mixed up. Onimusha. What we get in Onimusha is a sort of fantastical figure that is based on him. Now, to add to that, he is in his likeness in the anime is drawn in the likeness of Tishiro Mifune, who portrays him in the Samurai Trilogy film. This is a movie that we all need to watch again if you haven't seen it recently, and if you haven't seen it at all, you must watch it. It is the trilogy. And here's the thing too, because I do worry about this. I'm not going to lie to you. I do worry about this being a very testosterone driven sort of podcast, to where it's dudes and fighting and things like that. And hopefully every once in a while I do show up to where, like, I'm not really into the macho alpha man. I'm not into it at all. I don't want to alienate anyone who's not into these fighting things, but sometimes we are. Sometimes we do like a magical fight and things like that, right? I am trying to tell anyone that watches this, regardless of let's just say what side of the plate you're batting. Samurai Trilogy is a great trilogy to watch. It's a great piece of filmmaking. There's love story in there. It really is about the aging of a samurai warrior. Yes. Can everybody enjoy it? I think that if you can enjoy it for the subject matter in and of itself, you should be able to enjoy the filmmaking process of it if you're really into movies and things like that. But yes, it is a must watch, especially, of course, if you're into samurai and sword fighting and things like that. Now, the great thing about the anime, Onimusha, is that we're fighting demons, right? For the most part, you have magical artifacts. You fight demons. You use a sword, and you're going through a journey. So the sort of the way that the anime is split up is into sort of the Odyssey, to where you have travelers going and reaching places and fighting stages, sort of thing, kind of almost like, I guess, like a video game sort of thing, where you get to this stage, you got to fight these bad guys and then move on. But the background of the story is very much based on the Samurai Trilogy, to where for me, even though I kind of know what the next step was coming up at, it was very awesome for me to watch, to where, oh, I see what part this is. This is the part when he does this. Oh, I know what part this is. This is the part when he was at. And then to watch it unfold and see how they're doing it is, to me, really amazing. For once, I kind of think I know how the person who read the manga first feels like when they watch an anime and go, oh, this is the part where this is going to happen. And this is, okay, all right, this is how they did it, And in that sense, I am very much into it. I watched it dubbed. I did watch it in English. The last couple of shows that I watched, I have some free time, so I have been watching them in Japanese. And I'm very happy about that, actually. You get to watching so many dubbed shows that you think like, oh man, maybe I'm losing my edge as far as watching the Japanese characters and how they emote, and am I missing anything? And no, I'm good. It's funny how the characters in your head sound like, or how you imagine the whole story when you read the subtitles. I do think that some shows, the subtitles run a little bit too fast, and I don't get to appreciate the anime as much as I should. But, whatever. That's what the rewind button's for, right? Anyway, so I'm watching this anime, and I really appreciate the background that's going on here, because it's not, while it's based, all the movies are based on what may or may not be actual events. Somewhere along the line, somebody wrote something down, and the story of the samurai movie, the trilogy, is they're all based on more or less factual events, or what is deemed to be factual events of what's happening, and then there's a lot of filler material in the middle, I would assume. The anime has a completely different sort of plot line. We're not doing the same sort of thing that's happening in the Samurai Trilogy movies, and we're not exactly reinventing the wheel either. But within the normal tropes of anime, we have interjected into the parts of the three samurai movies. In the end, the trilogy, the big climax, Samurai 3 movie, the third part, it's called Duel at Ganryo Island, if you will. Maybe it's Ganryo Island instead of Janryo. And there are certain details, in my opinion, that are classical to the story itself and then depicted in the movie as well. Just from what I know, I am not a big scholar on Miyamoto. I am a sort of a quasi interested in because of the samurai. There does seem to be some sort of details that pan out when these duels happen. And the way that the anime handles those details is absolutely amazing. Just adding on the whole layer of magic and adding the layer of demons and zombies. The details that happen, especially at the climax at the end of the fight, really do make it just exceptional to where like, oh my God, I can't believe they're actually doing that. I can't believe that this is happening. I can't believe that the fact that he's going to fight with I guess I can give it away. It's not really, I'm going to say spoiler alert, just in case you haven't seen it. But if you see Samurai Trilogy, you kind of know what's going to happen. And it's just amazing to watch it unveil and just roll out in quote unquote live anime. And again, spoiler alert, of the trilogy, the way that, to make a super long story long, the duel has, Musashi usually fights with two swords. And then the bad guy fights, hold on, let me get the bad guy's name because it's kind of important, Sasaki. Now, Sasaki fights with a super long sword, I don't know, there's actual names for these swords. I don't know them, but let's just say it's an extra long katana. Miyamoto fights with two swords, two regular katanas. One on each hand, right? That's his style, and that's the style that he develops and makes his own. Well, the way that Miyamoto actually ends up killing Sasaki is that he takes an oar paddle while they take a boat across to the island, which is also a detail that's depicted in the anime. And along the way, Miyamoto carves out a long oar that's for him to fight against the long sword. While the anime doesn't allow for him to actually carve out, he just actually picks up a big old long oar from this whole destruction that's actually pretty amazing that happens. There's this whole fighting scene, and there's boats that are being shattered and crashed or what have you. He sees an oar. They both take a skiff, a little boat, to an island in wherever it is that they are, in the cave that they're in, and they fight. And while you don't actually see the whole fight, because I do think that could have been another 5 minutes, another maybe even 10 minutes worth of anime. You can, if you want to see the fight scene, see Samurai 3. And this is one of the reasons that Musashi Miyamoto actually survives, is because he's never lost a duel. And of course, some other things that happened at the end of the anime that's mysterious and awesome and what have you. The way an anime should end, when the Ronin walks into the sunset, sort of thing, or something like that, right? Us people that have seen these movies, we know that he doesn't lose, right? That's just a thing. Side note: if you also want to see the same fight roll out, or see the same fight, not necessarily roll out, but see how it ends, you can see Kill Bill, Volume 1, the fight with Oni. Wait, is her name? Ori. Her name's Ori. Onimusha. Oh, man, I forget her name. Well, Kill Bill, the blonde, the yellow-haired warrior, fights her final battle in Volume 1. That's a very loose interpretation of how the fight rolls out in Samurai 3 in the movie. Side note. And of course, that Kill Bill Volume 1 has anime in it. So, we all know that Quentin Tarantino also watches anime. And so I'm looking at this anime and I'm like, this is amazing. It ends the way it does. Musashi wins the fight. But it ends in such a way where, I'm going to be honest with you. Normally, I would tell you like I'm good, because there's only like 6 episodes or something like that, 8 episodes, something like this. It's not a full 10. Hold on, let me double check. I have it in the background here in silent mode, just so that I enjoy it. The thing that some parts do have a little too much CGI, but whatever. Yeah, it's only 8 episodes long. And all the episodes are your standard 24.5 minutes or what have you, okay? They're not hour-long episodes, so, and I think that's good. I think that somewhere along the line, you guys know what I think about extra large episodes, extra long. I mean, to be quite honest with you, Attack on Titan, and again, that's one of those journeys that I can't believe it's closing in on 10 years, if not already 10. To where, like, I can't believe I've been waiting this long to finish this thing. And I'll be honest with you, once it's over, I'll be glad with it. I'm done with it. I'm done with Titan. It's a good story. Don't get me wrong. It is a great anime, but I'm done with it. I want this one to be over. That's it. And I don't want any, and if there's any cliffhangers, I don't care for it. I hope it's the kind of cliffhanger that leaves you thinking as far as maybe the outcome of the future, as opposed to hopefully there's another season, because I don't want there to be another season. I'm just kind of done with that. I'm done with the whole thing. Don't get me wrong. Again, it's a great anime, but I don't know how these other anime are out there that have thousands of episodes long, and there's even criticism from the same people that started watching it from the beginning. How I've heard a couple of people saying, and that's their opinion, it's not mine, and I don't know, and this is second, third hand stuff, how they're like pretty much like, yeah, it's already gone, it's not really worth watching, yada, yada, yada. That's up to them, I'm still waiting for Black Clover I haven't heard anything about Black Clover. I do want that last season, and I'll be honest with you, if I get another season for 24, hell, even 12 episodes, I'm good. That's good enough for me. Let's watch somebody be the magical king, and that's the wizard king, and that's great. I'm good with it. But one of the things that I do that I wanted to touch on as far as those other animes that I mentioned is that how some of these animes have fight scenes that last episodes, and how I bitched and moaned about them. Okay, I'm on the record for that. I'm on the record like, hey, man, I don't need 3 episodes to see how a fight ends. Some of us might be really into that. And, it goes into some of these other fight shows, the Kengan shows and the other fight show on Netflix, where, it's 2 or 3 episodes of fight, and then some guy somehow finds the extra strength to come back and kill the other guy, but the other guy comes back and gets more strength, and you know what I'm talking about. But the difference that I found myself with this anime itself, Onimusha, is that there was, I dare say in some cases, a little too much talking. And I'm like, let's get to the fight scene. Some parts look CGI-ish, a little too CGI-ish, a little too more computer screen, but then some parts look really decent. But the fight scenes I thought were pretty fucking cool, to where I'm like, come on, just start fighting. Shut up and start fighting. And I don't need your philosophical backstory and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, let's get to the fight scenes. And I realize that this is just really for me. It's because I know that there's a samurai thing happening and how close it's happening to the story of the trilogy and the story of Musashi Miyamoto. I wish I could recommend this anime to everyone. Don't get me wrong, it's awesome. But I do see how there's not enough to keep everyone interested. And I don't want to make it seem like sexist, or I don't want to make it seem like, oh, some people wouldn't appreciate this. Maybe young ladies wouldn't appreciate this as much. I don't want to speak for anyone. But I didn't see as much of a balance in testosterone as there should have been, despite there being the little girl superhero in there. I call her superhero, whatever. If I had to critique this anime, and you guys know that that's not my thing, I don't sit here and talk good, bad, or evil about any anime. I just sit here and talk about the anime that I watched and that I enjoy. And any anime that I talk and enjoy, I recommend. And yes, I do recommend this, but with a caveat of like, there might be a little too much testosterone in it. That's all that I want to say on that. And that's maybe the only quote unquote critique, if you will, that I have on this, is that there isn't much of a love story. There isn't much else into this. It's really a more or less a straightforward sort of samurai movie that that's got some good fight scenes. By fighting, I mean sword fights. There's just a lot of weapons and sword fights that I really love, and a lot of people turning into monsters and stuff. The anime came up at a perfect time for me where I'm feeling nostalgic. Again, I'm telling you, I'm rewatching these animes that I saw 10 years ago, 15, not quite 15, more like 11 years ago. And how I'm really enjoying going back in time a little bit. And it comes at a good time for me. One of the things that I finally have is a pair of glasses. For those of you, and some of you are like, oh, fuck, what's so wonderful about a pair of glasses? Well, I kind of been blind in one eye, in my right eye for a while. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this before. Yeah, it's been a while. And I recently got the okay to say, okay, now you can go out and get glasses. And I got my glasses. And while it's not 100% vision, I don't have my vision back. I had 100% vision before it. My retina detached, and I had to attach it back on. And while I can see clear, I don't see perfect. And there's certain little spots that don't allow me to see detail. Overall, I can see like the whole scene pretty much. But if there's a certain detail like smack in the middle of something, I don't have that. There's a blind spot right in the middle of my eyesight. But it's better than it's been for the last 2 or 3 years. So I've got glasses. I have to get used to watching them again, or wearing them, and have to have my brain rebalance and readjust my eyesight. But it's just something that's finally come to light, and it's been a struggle for like past 2.5 years. And I'm just really happy, like getting ready to get out there and photograph and create and things like that. So as I'm starting to get nostalgic and seeing all these old movies and seeing, what I can do to create, it's really nice to kind of get reminded of the time where I could see. And 10 years ago when I was watching these movies as well. I don't know how that makes sense to anybody but me, but I'm feeling better, and I'm very optimistic and very, I wouldn't say, and see, here's the bad part, I think. I wouldn't say that I am depressed in any way. Certainly not to the point of really affected me psychologically to the point where I'm not mobile or not, paralyzed. Let's just say paralyzed emotionally, physically, and maybe socially, And, I hope that in some cases, though, even when we were doing our little Thanksgiving here, we did go around the table and, say thanks for certain things. And, we wanted to say thanks for, even if it's just one day a year. I do believe in Thanksgiving as sort of getting the family around and giving thanks and showing appreciation for what you have, and, maybe giving your appreciation to certain people. And, as a joke, I did thank family, and as a sort of joke, but not really, I really wanted to express how I'm glad that I more or less live in a spot where I don't have to worry about war. I don't have to worry about my house being bombed. And I don't have to worry about a lot of things that these poor fucking bastards on the other side of the world are having to worry day in and day out. I have to worry about getting up, going to work, making a podcast, eating, sharing some turkey with people. And I hope you guys are in the general spot to where you don't have to worry about too much. And hopefully, if it didn't happen for you this year, hopefully it happens to you very soon. And in a year, you'll be able to give thanks for what you have and what you were able to obtain in the next year. And that includes watching anime. I'm very happy that I have the ability, and very grateful that I have the ability to sit here and talk about some of my favorite anime and not have to worry about much else except whether or not my coffee's hot and my tacos are good, and that's about it, man. Again, this anime came around in some sort of perfect little cocktail of nostalgia for me, to where I'm like, man, I'm just really happy that, again, really happy that I get to watch anime and talk about it. And I really appreciate you guys as well, anyone who listens. And you know what? Anyone who doesn't listen, and anyone who watches anime and keeps anime alive, I appreciate all of you and thank all of you, from anyone who writes a little story to drawing it out, to directing, to photographing, and to consuming it. Right? We're all part of this little world that makes it a little better, hopefully. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys stay safe. Hopefully I'll talk to you before Christmas. If not, happy holidays, and take it easy.